You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
من هناك لشوارزنيجر
Ya lo hace, pierna derecha, directo al arco, golazo, 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 golazo.
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today. Kevin Laramee, joined by Duane Rollins. Once again, Duane Rollins on the phone again today. Duane, it seems like not a day can go by that we don't talk about China either getting somebody we watch or getting somebody we cover.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. The Chinese, although there are the new rules there that apparently the Chinese government has put in that are going to make things maybe a little more difficult for them, but we'll have to see how that runs. We're going to talk a little bit more today in the second block about some rumors that are coming here in Toronto about Sebastian Giovinco, and that's going to get a few people here a little bit nervous.
Yeah, well, a lot nervous, I would think. But before we talk about this, Duane, today in Canada, it's Bell Let's Talk Day, hashtag Bell Let's Talk, Belcos. It's mental illness awareness kind of special day today. So we wanted just to take a moment to say there's always somebody to talk to. And hey, if you want it to be us, you know where to reach us.
Yeah, look, and for those that don't know, and right now I think most people, even in the United States, just because of the reach of social media, are aware of Bell Let's Talk Day. They do donate 5 cents per every tweet or Facebook post as well. I'm on Twitter, so I don't really follow the Facebook stuff and all that. Although, on social media, I should probably know that stuff now. But anyway, so yeah, if you retweet what I put out this morning, which is a tweet that just has 40 cents worth of Bell Let's Talk hashtags on it, if we can get that up to 250 collectively as an audience, then that's $100, which is a small gesture, but $100 goes to help a little bit mental health research, mental health awareness, things like that. It's all good. We're not going to dwell on this today, although it is important, I think, for athletes to not, especially athletes that are in macho sports, to not let that kind of persona dictate their willingness to get help. And that's kind of the message, I think, from a sports perspective, we need to get out there, that it's okay to deal with the emotional side, the mental side of your game, of your life, and that's going to ultimately make you a better athlete. Don't think that you're not being quote unquote a man if you do that. And that's my message, Kevin. I think that there's lots of great places to get this material out there. Just Google Bell Let's Talk. There's tons of stuff out there. Read it, absorb it, think about it for the day. That's what the day's about. And we'll give you some football news after that, after we've given you this little public service announcement, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Duane, to bring this conversation to a little wider perspective concerning sports, mental practice, mental training is part of sport, and this should be part of all our daily lives to make sure we are healthy that way. Because we talk about mental illness, it's hard to find the other spectrum, but it is our duty to take care of ourselves, and the best way to do this is, if you need to talk to about it. And now, Duane, I want to talk to you about San Antonio for a little bit. San Antonio is one of the markets that are heavily rumored, if not even almost guaranteed, to get an MLS bid at least in for January 31st. And here's an article that the Raleigh City Sports Weekly, a website from the North Carolina, close to probably Raleigh Durham. This is where they are, the sports website that talks about their sport. And because they are one of the 10 markets, they've given a little roundabout of other markets, and they talk about San Antonio. And a few interesting facts, Duane, about San Antonio. It's the 7th largest city in the United States. It's bigger than both Dallas and Austin, and it's not too far away. Where the stadium is, where Toyota Field is about 15 miles of San Antonio itself downtown, but it's only 65 miles off of Austin, which is the capital of Texas, which is as well a market that you could draw a fan base from. What interests me, though, is the Spurs and San Antonio Sports and Entertainment Consortium, which are owner of the Spurs, which are now signed a 25-year lease for Toyota Field. They took that over from the San Antonio Scorpions. So rest in peace, the Scorpions. A few years ago, San Antonio Spurs, San Antonio FC came up, and they made a bet with, well, it's not necessarily a bet, but with the city of San Antonio and BR County. Let's put it this way. If in 5 years they do not get an MLS franchise, they will pay a $5 million penalty to the city. When you're willing and ready to make that type of bet, you kind of feel that your bid is probably going to be very strong.
Or you have, you're done with your money, one of the two, I suppose. But nonetheless, yeah, San Antonio is a fascinating one in the sense that it's so far away, so out of mind in our mind, and it has so few other professional franchises other than the Spurs themselves. It's the only one, right? Like there's no hockey team there, there's no baseball team there, so you don't think of it in the same way as a major market like you just mentioned. In many ways, it's like Sacramento, where it has like the single other quote unquote major league team out there. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not that bet pays off. It's close to Mexico as well, obviously, and I think there might be some people within the MLS world that think that maybe trying to get some teams that are trying to pull in more Mexican Americans, maybe even more Mexicans, literally, if you're in that cross border, there's options there to get over that. I think there's a lot to play into that. Do we need a third team in Texas? There's your question. The geographical spread of where these teams are going to go is fascinating to me, because at this point in time, I think MLS is kind of thinking that way. They are kind of thinking that they need to just sort of hit all of the regions, because that really is the way that you get those TV numbers up, because it is a regional sport. So if you're lacking in fan bases and teams, then you're going to suffer on the TV numbers. And is San Antonio going to be one of those places that allows them to tap into that a little bit more, Kevin?
Yeah, what's interesting too as well with the proposition of the enlargement of Toyota Field is Toyota Field right now is located in a center of a large entertainment district parcel with Morgan's Wonderland, which is a amusement park, and in the spring of 2017, Inspiration Island Water Park. So there's an amusement park and a water park to the east. There's a 12-field regional soccer complex to the north, an 11,000-seat Hero Stadium, football stadium, American football stadium for a high school, which is crazy, but hey, that's how high school football is in the States. Northern and western sides of the entertainment district are an old quarry with 40-foot walls, which provide a pretty cool ambiance for potential future mixed-use development. But if you do have the space and the capability to enlarge Toyota Field in a complex that could generate maybe traffic and the soccer culture, and who knows, maybe those training field on north of it, really like a 10-minute walk, not even, maybe that will become the training center. There's a lot of possibilities here with that place they do have in 15 miles west of Austin.
Yeah, fair enough, and that's
sorry.
an important consideration. But I think that ultimately, I don't know, most people are probably still know the famous Bill Clinton's term of phrase during the election campaign when he won. It's the economy's stupid. I think that you can use a similar thing when you're talking about MLS expansion. It's the ownership stupid. And I think in this particular case, when you have a professional team, an existing very highly successful professional team already part of this, that you can look at that, it's the ownership stupid and sort of say, maybe they do have a good chance to get in there. And you're right, though, it is a team that we don't really, or a team, I'm already calling them a team. It is a bid that we don't really think about that much. We talk about the Midwest teams. We even talk about, places like Las Vegas, which I'm not even sure are really in the mix yet, right? Like there's stuff like that get so much more attention than San Antonio, and it is a curious thing of why that's the case.
I remember reading last week, Duane, about Vegas. You mentioned, I think I talked about it on the show, where there is some talks, but the deadline is coming so quickly that there might be more in talks and development for next year. The fact that they do have an NHL franchise coming has alleviated the pressure to the council to get sports franchises to come to Vegas. They already have the one, and now with the Raiders probably coming, I think the MLS has maybe lost their small window they have in Vegas for this round at least. Maybe the next expansion round or the one after will be where Vegas will be more considered. But just San Antonio, the Spurs, a big NBA franchise, and is touted as one of the most well-run franchise in sports. The way they run, manage their money, the way they're profitable, the way they manage their capital assets, their infrastructures, their buildings. And that is one of the key component here, in my opinion. If you have a strong backbone, if you have a strong organization and infrastructures already built into place to generate revenue, ticket sales, advertisement, marketing, footprints of your brand in the local media, when you already have that and you decide to get a USL franchise and assign a 20-year lease of that stadium, you do have ambition. And the timetable seems perfect for a San Antonio to squeak in. Nobody expects it because there's already two teams in Texas, and present a very, very interesting bid.
Yeah, well, and if you consider San Antonio part of the Southwest, maybe that is Texas is kind of its own gig. I get that, but if you stretch it out and consider it part of the Southwest, it might check one of the boxes off in that sort of regional model that MLS is trying to cover there. I don't hear a bid coming out of Phoenix, which would be probably the biggest center down there. So this might be the next best thing, and it is sort of on its own a little bit. You mentioned Austin too. That's interesting.
It's only 65 miles drive. It's right off the I-35 corridor, so it's not a far drive. You're talking about an hour and 15-minute drive to get to the stadium.
Yeah, and look, that's a center that has a lot of they have a lot of hipsters in there. Let's just say it out loud. And I go to a Major League Soccer. I'm in a Major League Soccer supporters group. I have a beard and I wear checkered shirts a lot and toques in months that I shouldn't. So I probably shouldn't judge hipsters when I say that. Nonetheless, that I think is part of that market that we see often in the stadiums. And alas, that might be a bit of a fit too there. I know Austin's had a couple of struggles in the sense that they've lost a couple teams up there and haven't been able to completely get through seasons. But again, I think that might just come down to the fact that it's ownership. And even San Antonio's, the Scorpions, as you said, that was ownership too, maybe, and the fact that they could not to make it happen. The Spurs, to me, that is when you want to talk about this expansion bid, you have to start and finish with the fact that the ownership is so strong, and it may be arguably the strongest ownership group that is involved in this current round of expansion.
Just to finish the first block, Duane, totally unrelated, but Clint Dempsey has been cleared per Garth Lagerwey to full training, and that was reported by Matt Pence on social media yesterday. But Clint Dempsey back on training is a good news for the Seattle Sounders, and something that we all wish would happen because of his irregular heartbeat. We wanted the best for him, and if he's cleared to play, all is good for him, which it really was difficult for him to be part of the entire celebration but not being actually able to play.
Yeah, you'll forgive the Torontonians for being all that upset about his feelings the night of the celebration. I kid, sort of, but nonetheless, it's good for him to get back there, so long as all of the medical stuff is above board, and I have no reason to think that it isn't. You wish him well and hope that this never comes back again. And I think obviously if it does reappear, this condition, then perhaps that might be it for Clint Dempsey. But I'm sure that he is very eager to get back to try and do something that is very difficult in Major League Soccer, and that is help Seattle repeat as champions. It's especially difficult when a team has sort of done it the way Seattle did, that they came like Portland did the year before, where you come out of nowhere to win it, really. But certainly Seattle had a disappointing regular season, and he will be looking to contribute with that to make that better and maybe make a run at going after the elusive double in Major League Soccer. We'll see. Only a month or so to go now. Unbelievable how quickly things are going, Kevin.
No, it's crazy. We'll take a break and come back. We'll talk about the rumors of Giovinco to China.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
Duane, we talked about it at the top of the show. Not a day goes by where China doesn't make some sort of splash in the world of soccer. This time around, it comes from Toronto, and it comes from the mouth of his agent himself. Apparently, Giovinco has received a offer from China.
Yeah, 2 offers, actually, is what the suggestion is. So that's certainly something here that has gotten people talking. Right now, if you listen to the chatter in Toronto about this, it's mostly, to be honest, the media that's talking about it. A lot of fans are refusing to believe that this is a possibility that he's going to leave for China. I think that that's kind of a common denominator when you're talking about most fan bases and most Chinese rumors, is that no one believes that their player would possibly leave them for this league that makes no sense to them.
And then they sign. That's how it happens usually. So I'm always a little wary. Even when it's either Costa or other players, I'm always a little concerned.
Yeah, and look, the other part of this too that most people think is Giovinco. He's 2 years into this. He's been a very good player for Toronto, obviously. You would think that he's a very valuable player to the Toronto market. And when an agent starts talking about rumors and interesting things that are happening out there, particularly after a player is a few years into a contract, that's kind of the gig that I get out of it. Is he's going, you know what, MLSE, you make a lot of money there. I've been noticing that your league revenue is going up. The Raptors are still doing pretty well. You went to the MLS Cup final. Maybe you want to give us a little more money. It does seem like a little strange that you might be able to get Giovinco's contract from that $7 million range up to into whatever, 10, 15, whatever the hell he wants out of it. But when you think of the overall salary structure at MLSE as a company as a whole, it really wouldn't be that much bigger of a jump to give him a couple million more dollars a year. And is that the gig that's happening here? Is that what's going on? Is Giovinco just trying to get a little more cash out of MLSE to get a commitment long term? That does ring a bell too.
Maybe that playoff run did not just entice TSN to get the rights back, but enticed maybe Giovinco to get a bigger paycheck. That would not necessarily be that surprising to me. When you look about Giovinco now, it's third preseason with Toronto FC. Everybody was surprised when he first was announced, the first year one. It was announced for the summer, and he decided to find ways to come right away because he was excited about the project. How do you approach year 3 with Giovinco, Duane?
Yeah, certainly I think that Giovinco, it's difficult to call his season last year a disappointment, because if you look at it statistically, it was perhaps and arguably the second greatest season in MLS history by a player. He still had like more combined assists and goals than anyone else by a mile. He should have been MVP. It's ridiculous that he wasn't even on the short list. Like, that's not even defendable. I mean, I could maybe make an argument when you get into like the to his player kind of stuff when you're talking about David Villa. But when you're talking about not even shortlisting him last year, as we talked a lot about it, it's utterly ridiculous. And it's appalling to me that the reason that he wasn't, and if you look at the votes for the year before, is because the other players aren't voting for him. And I can only think that that's some kind of protectionism or jealousy that's coming out in that particular case. It's ridiculous.
What? Yeah, I don't think necessarily jealousy, or I think sometimes it's as easy as maybe they just don't like him personally. They don't like how he's the type of player that he does makes everybody else not necessarily like him the best, right? Because he's confrontational, he's argumentative on the pitch, he's going to react, he's going to, I don't want to say dive, but he's going to flop from time to time and attract some attention to him, and that makes the other players look bad. And it might be that opinion that could be not necessarily spread, but part in the players, and not necessarily just, we're jealous of his talents.
Yeah, well, I think maybe some of the stuff that he does skill-wise in terms of like not making players, and there's that famous GIF from that game.
Yeah, he's maybe not the most respectful player out there. Well, with his skill set, yeah. There's some players like that the game against New England where he basically made the two players run into each other and look foolish. That those players might look at that as showboating because it was in the middle of the pitch, and did he really need to do that? But then again,
his probably argument back is, did you really need to kick me 16 times today, right? Like there's tip for tat when it comes to that, but it is a bit of a strange thing. Nonetheless, what do we look for in his third season? I think that obviously he'd be motivated, you would think, by what happened at the end, and he certainly was after the New York series. Whatever happened in that particular time, he wasn't the same player. Even he was basically Josie and even Michael Bradley's play in the Montreal series and just overall collective effort that led them over the impact. But
I would go
certainly against.
Sorry, Duane, I was going to say I was go as far as saying that in the playoff itself, Giovinco was not a driving force of TFC like he was during the season when he went at his peak. So if you look at year one, MVP for Giovinco. Year two, there's that playoff run, MLS Cup, the Vergers Cup, and the MLS Cup participation at home and the whole schmoz. And if you're looking at now, year three, what does he need? Does he need that MLS Cup? Is getting the MVP again? What is the measure of success for 2017 for Giovinco? It's a precedent.
Yeah, I would think that finishing the job and winning a championship would be what he would want to do. And if that is the case, then you have to ask yourself how Toronto is going to handle him this year. Would it be feasible, conceivable, something that they should do for him to be rested purposely in August and September if Toronto has enough points on the board at that point to be assured of a high seed? Or should they be driving forward to win a Shield? Now, he's a European, so he might even be more motivated to win a Shield. Some of them are, right? That might be how they view, because that's just how they've grown up. And you hear European players say this all the time. They say, I don't understand these playoffs. Like, what the hell? Why am I not the champion? I had the most points in the season. Nonetheless, he doesn't seem like a guy that's necessarily going to go down that road just based on his comments in the past. So it is interesting to see. Just real quickly on your comment, he did have the hat trick against NYCFC, so you have to consider that as a big driving force in the playoffs. But other than that,
in a 7-0 aggregate,
yeah, even in that game though, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't think he was healthy, and that's why I'm sort of speculating out loud that it perhaps makes sense if Toronto's goal is to win the MLS Cup, and obviously it probably should be. I don't think that the Supporters' Shield would play here at all. I don't know. I just don't think it would ever, like, they'd win it and half the crowd would be like, well, so it's like the President's Trophy. That's the hockey equivalent. And, tell me who won the President's Trophy last year. I know because it's my team, but not many other people do.
No, exactly. Nobody knows that it's Washington.
Yeah. All right. There you go. But alas, it's going to be interesting times. And in terms of this China stuff, it is, it's the other side of it too, is what's the transfer offer?
I was going to say how big, how much, and how much should it be until you consider it? We talked about this with Piatti a few weeks ago. What if the offer from Argentina actually worth thinking about? And by the way, quickly, Piatti was in a plane last night with Bernardello on his way to Orlando, where the team has traveled yesterday. So they started their training camp in Montreal yesterday for the Montreal Impact, and then moved to Orlando for a few weeks, coming back to Montreal, then going to go to Tampa Bay and St. Petersburg for that invitational. Go back to Giovinco. How big has the offer, how big does it need to be to make TFC consider that offer for the future of TFC?
Yeah. There's a couple things going on there, though. If you're ML, put yourself in MLSE's head for a second. Obviously, a lot of people are instinctively going to go, making, the dollar sign with the S, and just think of MLSE that way. But they all do have like PR to think about and things like that. And if they were to just sell, Giovinco to their best player, the most recognizable soccer player for, 20 million or 30 million or something like that, I think that there's a lot of people in this market that would just throw their arms up in the air and go, see, you've proven yourself. You come off your successful season. You're an inch away from winning the MLS Cup. And instead of going for it, instead of trying to finish that off and keep things in line, you're going to sell your best player. And that would make people it would reinforce their stereotypes, their beliefs about what MLSE is. So I think that the offer would have to be ridiculously high, so that the shareholders within MLSE would be like, yeah, you got to take that, because I think that they understand, particularly the new version of MLSE, since the teachers' pension plan left a while ago and have come back with Bell and the Unholy Alliance, as they call it, Bell and Rogers together. They tend to have put the sporting considerations ahead of the monetary considerations because both of those two companies make so much more money on their other business that they don't really need MLSE to make as much.
And if you don't know why, it's the place in the world where cable and phones are the most expensive is in Canada. So let's not, we all know why they make so much money.
Yeah, it doesn't come down. Like the teachers' pension plan, which who used to own MLSE, if you're an American listener, they were pension plans, so they were like legally obligated to make the most money they could, and that's why that dictated a lot of the decisions that the Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment Limited made in terms of what they had to do. Like they had to prioritize profitability over sports success, and that was incredibly frustrating in a market like this, and it led to the dark ages of Toronto sports, where the Blue Jays were aside because they weren't owned by them, but the rest of them were like, they were prioritizing, getting just enough success to get a couple of playoff dates so they can be as profitable as possible without doing what they need to do in those leagues to get good. That doesn't happen anymore. So that is a long-winded way to bring this back to TFC for me to say that it seems unlikely that they would prioritize selling Javinko for profit unless they could make a sporting argument that the money that they made would drive them forward. That does beg the question: is there any amount of allocation money out there that could possibly replace Javinko? I don't know, Kevin. I don't. Yeah. I tend to think no.
Not just that, the how they got him. That whole. I hope there's a book written about it eventually, on how that whole week and a half went down with Javinko, Bradley, and Altador. But I do know that for a fact, when you work that hard to go get a player, you find him, you find the opportunity, you find a player that you think would fit in your league, your system, and he's not happy where he is, not getting the playing time. All the little intangible that needed to happen for Javinko to be a Toronto FC player, trying to recreate that, I think it takes a lot more work and effort than just maybe giving him a little bit more money, which maybe that's why the whole thing is happening in the first place.
I will give him the money. That's kind of where I come down with. If Jose Bautista, the Blue Jays, could get $60 million after basically throwing a fit for 6 months, I think that we could give Javinko a few more million. I know it's not my money to spend.
After realizing that it's not greener anywhere else and nobody was willing to give him something similar, like, all right, I'm just going to come back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know it's a different sport. It's a different ownership group and all that sort of stuff, and the financials are different in it, but nonetheless. And it's not my money, but I think, it's not my money, but I feel that after 10 years, I've contributed enough of my money to it that I'm okay with saying that we should give Javinko a little bit more money to keep him around. And that's the other, it's unfortunate. We didn't really get to this yesterday, but they did officially announce the change of the CCL format so that Toronto will not play its games until February 2018. That is a bit unfortunate in the sense that it's possible that Javinko will never play in that tournament, and I would kind of like to see that happen. I would kind of like to see Toronto keep its core together to see what they might be able to do against one of those Mexican teams. So if that's going to happen, I think they're going to need to find a way to extend his contract and even think about the publicity around it. You could have a press conference in March, maybe just before the home opener. Even if they get the signing dealt before the home opener, I'd wait off to that week just to get that bump, because it's going to be a time when, if the Leafs continue playing decently, they might get in a playoff run.
You think it's not going to be leaked? Everybody's going to report it before, so if you're trying to hold that news, it's not going to happen. So it's
sure.
2017, right?
Sure, but you still can have the big splash where you extend it and he announces I've signed a 5-year deal or a 4-year deal or something. I'm going to retire as a Toronto FC player. It'd be it would give them a big push in that week. And TFC
and they sell them 2 years later to China.
Well, yeah, that's neither here nor there at the moment, right? But anyway, last quick thought on it before we wrap it up, Kevin. He did actually meet reporters yesterday and speak English to them for the first time. So to me, that indicates that he has a desire to stay here. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but the fact that he's putting that much effort, that he wants to go out and speak English, he's letting his agent do the dirty work.
Yeah.
That's just par for the course. But he does show a dedication to staying in this market, in this city. He likes the lifestyle here. We've said that many times before. Yeah. I'm not sure the lifestyle would be the exact same in China for him. It's one thing for an Italian that lives in a city where you can, like, I can walk around the corner and find people to speak Italian to me if I want, and I'm not even Italian. I'm sure he has no problem living in his language.
I think the fact that you've seen Giovinco speak English now, it's very similar to Nacho Piatti, who started to speak French as well to the media starting last year. They had a base. They could conversate, if that's a word, every single day with normal people, but to be comfortable enough to do interviews where you have to explain your thoughts and not trying to be misquoted, it needs a certain confidence in that language, and that needs a little bit of time to get built up before you can actually do it. And I think that's the same reason behind Nacho Piatti now being comfortable to do interviews in French. Same for Giovinco now, feeling more comfortable to at least do some part of the interviews in English himself.
Yeah. Giovinco is a player that in this market, TFC is still, even with the championship run last year, still very much number 4. They're well ahead of the Argos now, I think, but they're nowhere close to the Raptors. And that's just not going to happen anytime soon. But Giovinco himself, I think, he oversees, like, he's above and beyond TFC. He's a major player in this market, to the fact that I've heard conversations on sports radio here where they talk about whether he's the most talented player, like, pound for pound in the city, in any sport. And that, I think he's part of the furniture in the city now after just 2 years, and it would be a shame to lose him so quickly. And hopefully they can get something done. All right, Kevin, let's take a break, come back, and we'll wrap up with some B&Bs.
You're listening to Soccer Today on SPN Radio. You can find the on-demand version of this very show on iTunes, Stitcher, Feedburner, Podbay Player, Podbean, anywhere you get your podcasts under the Sports Podcasting Network feed. Subscribe to our YouTube page to make sure you never miss a live show talking about soccer today, the MLS postgame show, open lines after dark, 5 rings daily during the Olympics. Make sure you subscribe and give us a follow on Twitter at SportsPodNet, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. The Bits and Bytes on Soccer Today. And we are back on Soccer Today. The Bits and Bytes, Duane. A lot of little signings, a lot of roster movement, homegrown, been released. Let's start with you, Duane.
Yeah, the first one that jumps out to me, and I don't know what the hell is happening in Houston. They signed a 37-year-old, not even a 37-year-old that would have a major sort of bump in marketing and sort of appeal. So just get it off the top. Is it, what exactly is going on in Houston? Maybe this guy's okay. I don't know. 37? Seriously? What's going on in Houston, Kevin?
Interesting. Matt Jordan, technical director of the Houston Dynamo. We'll see. Houston have been struggling over the last 2 seasons after a remarkable run of many seasons that led to the inauguration of BBVA Compass Stadium, and now things are different in Houston. It's not as successful. They're not pull off their we'll finish 4th and make a big deep run a la LA Galaxy anymore, Houston type of roster. So it's the big names of the past, which used to help, are not going to be doing it anymore. So no, I'm very intrigued by Houston ever since Dominic Kinnear's departure. Even before then, I think a lack of direction, which even if you look at the Quakes right now, it's interesting how lack of direction has been. The Quake and the old Quakes have been in the same kind of lack of direction in identity of club.
Yeah, and look, maybe it comes down to one of those things where Houston is one of those 2.0 teams that hasn't really fully adjusted to the 3.0 era yet. Not necessarily the biggest market that is out there. Speaking of 2.0 teams that maybe haven't adjusted to the 3.0 era yet, we'll segue into RSL. They have re-signed Joel Plata. Okay, we all know my ambivalence towards Mr. Plata. He obviously started his career in TFC, decided to walk away from them in the middle of the night. For some reason, some fans here still want to forgive him for that, thinking that the team was just so bad that that was the right thing to do. To act incredibly unprofessionally and just walk away from your teammates is never the right thing to do. However, he has landed on his feet in RSL and has signed an extension for that. Is he the type of player you want to build a team around, though? I think that Plata, based on having seen him, I'm going to taking my own bias against him away. His undersizement, we just talked about Javenko, so being undersizement. How kind of word is that, Duane? His undersizedness. Anyway, his tininess. He's a little guy. That is a difficult thing to when you don't quite have the otherworldly level of talent that Javenko has. Plata has very good talent, but I don't know if I'd want to build around him completely. But nonetheless, RSL has seemed to do so. I don't know, Kevin. Any thoughts on Joel Plata?
No, I just thought that he had a great beginning of career when he was first acquired by RSL a few years ago, and then he was successful as a third, fourth option. Then he gets his little more space, and he's effective. When he's the number one option, he hasn't thrived in Major League Soccer. So there is that. Moving on, Duane, now to in LA, the SEC, which is the Securities and Commission, are investigating the Bank of California. The CEO resigned. This relates to soccer because this is the stadium sponsor for LAFC. They are committed to build a 22,000 stadium for the brand new MLS expansion that will come in next year. But the Bank of California Stadium, it'll be interesting how that unfolds because the Bank of California is under investigation and their CEO has resigned. So maybe it won't be the Bank of California Stadium after all.
Well, just hopefully it's a stadium. And I don't want to comment too much on an investigation right now. It's not really where this podcast is going to have to go. But hopefully that does get worked out for LAFC, because really that's what distinguishes them between the Galaxy right now, if they can get a downtown stadium built. And I've looked at some of the demographics around people that have sort of they have an ability to put an indication of interest down, basically, is what it comes down to. And they're also tracking where they sell their merchandise and things like that. And you'll find that it's primarily in the downtown of LA. It's very similar, I think, to what the NYCFC Red Bulls kind of split will be. Obviously, they're not in two different states in this particular case, but you'll kind of have a suburban core divide, I believe, in how this team's fans will set out. And if you can't get a stadium built down there, then you'll lose some of that. And then what the hell is distinguishing you against the Galaxy? And just basically the zombie Chivas at that point, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the spread of LA is over 90 miles. So you do have space to have the outer crown more the Galaxy fan base, which is the case with the stadium in Carson, and the inner core more the LAFC crowd.
Yeah, my undergraduate bachelor's degree has urban geography involved in it. I know LA is studied as basically how not to build a city, but so yeah, the spread, the urban sprawl of it is pretty bad. Houston's pretty bad for that too. I know way too much about urban sprawl and crap like that because I have a BA that I've never really used on it. Anyway, all right, moving on.
Just a little quick information, Duane, here. Tampa Bay Rowdies have bought ads on Times Square, huge billboards that are rotating. It's digital billboards, but say MLS to St. Pete, trying to promote the brand of soccer and to grow and hype the potential arrival of an MLS franchise expansion team to Tampa Bay as the Rowdies. So interesting money spending for Tampa Bay to try to get attention where the media is located.
Yeah, I'm sure that Joe and Jane Smith from Oklahoma City are really understanding that bulletin board where they're getting their photo taken on with the naked cowboy in Times Square. But nonetheless, it's something that people can do. I know that San Jose, San Jose, when they were trying to build the new stadium and get things moving that way to get some attention for them, bought some ads all over the country as well. I saw one in Toronto. I remember walking one night and seeing a San Jose earthquake bulletin board. I wondered, what the hell is that? It was advertising the All-Star game is what it was. They were trying to get people to come. But nonetheless, it's a strange, I guess they're trying to get the attention of Don Garber. I don't know what that does. It's kind of strange. It's like when
because maybe he's going to see it from his office. I don't know.
Yeah, they have bulletin board. They found a way. Like, they can't be cheap, I guess. Maybe they're trying to say, look, we can afford this bulletin board.
Maybe they hacked it. You just hacked the bulletin boards. You don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. I remember it's like the Pro Rel Truthers when they bought the plane that flies around the stadium. Pro Rel for the USA now.
How
really
1990s is that, to have a plane with a message in the background?
I don't know. You can't even see. I don't know whether they got it done in Toronto. They were talking about it. I honestly wasn't really paying attention for it that night. And I can guarantee you none of the other 36,000 people there were too much concerned with any planes flying around the stadium either. So if they did spend their money that day, it was a waste of money. Speaking of Pro Rel, we're going to work on getting Peter Wild on here to talk about his Pro Rel manifesto that was in Howler. We're going to look to do him later this week or early next week. We'll see what we can do there. But I know that that's an article that has a lot of people talking. We're not going to really delve into it ourselves. We might as well get the author on. We'll reach out to Peter in the days ahead and see what we can do there, Kevin.
Yep. And another, when we talk about Pro Rel, it does bring a romantic type of subplot in our mind. When we think about a homegrown, it's the same. But this time around, a homegrown has been released by one of the teams in MLS that usually cherishes their homegrown. It happens from time to time. One gets released. Dallas has released an homegrown.
Yeah, and look, I just put this on the lineup because I do think that the first thing I saw was right after. If you look at the Twitter reaction to this, and I don't have his name in front of me, so I apologize to the young man. But at any rate, maybe he doesn't want to know. Want people to know he was released. They just sign up for the photo op or for the press release. And I hear that in Toronto all the time too. And there might have been some truth to that in Toronto's battle days, where like guys like Matt Stinson, just to name one name, who's a current player in in League One Ontario right now, bingo card. Guys like that, Oscar Cordon, another League One Ontario player, that were signed and then sort of never really given a chance. And there might have been an element of like, well, we're really struggling, so let's play up this angle that we're helping the local community out by signing these kids, when in reality, they weren't really signing these kids. And this kind of actually ties in the homegrown issues to me to what we just said, the Pro Rel stuff. And then I always wonder, if Pro Rel would ever happen, how realistic it would be that young kids would ever get a chance to play. Because right now they're struggling with it to get opportunities for them. If you have the pressure of them possibly being relegated, no team on earth is going to play their kids as much in MLS. And that's just sort of how I come down on that one. But it is something to watch out for. But as you say, homegrown players get released all the time. I don't think we necessarily have to view it as any different here in North America. Some of them just aren't good enough. They get the team sees enough in them to give them a chance. They give them that chance. They don't take it. You move on. It's a hard luck world.
Well,
right?
Yeah, and sometimes players are developed from the academy and becomes homegrowns to become assets to be sold and to have other playing opportunities somewhere else. Look at Manchester City now. Another player, midfielder, another Ghanaian, has been signed this time by Colorado Rapids. Bismarck Nana Ajay Boateng from Man City. Another guy who says from Man City, but it's more the academy, the development system of Man City, which in a way for some American players or homegrowns of Major League Soccer, it's the same way. They're going to sign in the USL somewhere. They're going to sign maybe in Division 3 in Germany, anywhere, but it was developed by an academy. So it turns out to be a product in itself.
Yeah, City's EDS program is producing lots of players, but only a very, very, very few will play for Manchester City ever. And I think the players themselves even understand that over there, right? They go in there, they get into the best professional development model that they can get, and then they get a job wherever they can get. And they don't necessarily think that they're going to be a member of the first team of the club that they're playing for as a kid, because they know the stats. And I don't know necessarily whether we're fully mature enough over here in North America when it comes to homegrown players. This rule is just 10 years old this year to fully appreciate that. We haven't seen enough of it come through yet. And when I say that rule is 10 years old, it is, but it's only about 5 years old in the sense that when we really started to see teams start to use it. And it's going to be a while before we fully understand what exactly a homegrown player situation is going to look like here. But I do think, as we're seeing in New York, in Dallas, even to a lesser extent in places like Vancouver and Toronto, Montreal, that there will be a greater emphasis on this moving forward, because they are assets in a big way. We just have to find a way to make sure that we're not just using them as pawns, and that we give them a true opportunity to play once they are in that first team environment. I am a believer in quotas. I think that MLS should get away with the international rules and instead make a homegrown quota. but I don't think we're moving that way just quite yet because I don't think they think there's enough talent there yet. But hopefully in the future we'll see something that does give them a little bit more of an opportunity. Kevin, any final thoughts?
Yeah, you wanted to mention as well that Canada did beat Panama. No, it's not at the senior level, but still, when Canada at the U20 does something good, we need to talk about it. They beat England last year. We talked about it. And this time around, in a match where we talked about this before, we love that Canada plays those type of meaningful game against the Panama, the other rivals in the CONCACAF, to give the experience to the players of those environments, those teams, those different playing style, reaction, instinct that those players have. So that's great for Canada to beat Panama 1-0 last week.
Yeah, look, they're coming on to the qualifying campaign, which will happen later next month. I believe it starts. So just about the time that we're heating up into Major League Soccer, getting close to the start of their season, we'll be doing the under 20 qualifiers, and that's kind of in my mind when the season starts again is when the U20 qualifiers hook up, because we'll be obviously paying a lot of attention to them. It's a weird little format too, just in case you haven't looked at it. There's groups of there's 4 or 3 groups that then the top 2 qualify for, and then there's 2 groups from there that you then get to 4 teams from. So you're going to play 2 groups in the tournament, which is ridiculously convoluted, but nonetheless, that's what CONCACAF has decided to do. Just so they can squeeze a few more teams into the qualifying tournament. Canada's in tough with Honduras and Mexico in their group. They also have, I think it's Bermuda or something that's in there with them. So they should be in for at least 3rd, but they're going to have to beat Honduras in that. So getting a win over Panama does indicate to me that the idea of them being better than the Honduran under 20 team is not ridiculous, and hopefully they can get it done when it comes to it next month.
Yeah, exactly. Quickly to finish the show, Ivory Coast lost 1-0 to Morocco. Ivory Coast are out of the Africa Cup of Nations 2017 and will not defend their crown, as well as Sebastien Letou in MLS has now signed with DC United. That was reported by Stephen Goff from the DC area yesterday. And until tomorrow for another edition of Soccer Today, for Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramee. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute. You can follow myself on Twitter at Kev Laramee, and this very show at Soccer Today SPN. And until tomorrow, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.